Dead of Winter is about an actress who's lured to a secluded mansion surrounded by snow, under the promise of a role in a movie. She slowly realizes that she's been held captive by two strangers, but the reasons why are surprisingly complicated. Let's dive in to Dead of Winter. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always with the freshly touched up mustache is Tim.
Peter, are we just gonna record a podcast with your brother right there?
This is a horror movie podcast. We get together and we talk about a movie, and this is the awkward episode at the end of December that's after Christmas, but it's not January yet, and we want to do something vaguely seasonal, so it was like, okay, a winter horror movie, not a Christmas horror movie because we're past Christmas, but a winter horror movie. And of course, we landed on Dead of Winter, which is what we're here to talk about today. So that's what we're going to get into. We'll start spoiler free, of course. We'll give you a warning before we get to spoilers. And before we get started, I'll just tell everyone, if you enjoy the show, hit the like button if you're on YouTube. It helps out a bunch. And if you want to support us, you can do that over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get a bonus episode every month and maybe some other bonuses to be announced soon.
And also, before we get started, I just want to say we're bouncing around some ideas for some possible New Year's Eve movies to do, and there's one we're thinking about that we decided against, and I did start watching it, and let's just say that it's probably a good thing that we didn't do it.
Oh yeah, because a New Year's movie for this week would have been perfect. We've done New Year's Evil, we've done Terror Train, we even did Bloody New Year, which was really, really shit. But like, there's no New Year's horror movies left, so we're left with winter. We're left with Dead of Winter. So let's get into the show, shall we? Basic premise of Dead of Winter is that Mary Steenburgen, if I'm saying her name correctly, is it Bergen maybe? Steenburgen? Is it soft?
I thought it was Steenburger, so
Burger.
you got me.
No, it's definitely an N at the end. Yeah,
I was a little hungry.
that's fair enough. Who I mainly know from Back to the Future Part 3, but later on saw... Yeah.
Come on, Curb Your Enthusiasm, no?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, later on I saw her in Curb Your Enthusiasm as Ted Danson's wife, because she is in fact Ted Danson's wife.
Yeah.
But
lucky SOB.
But like I knew her from Back to the Future 3 for like a decade plus before I got to Curb Your Enthusiasm, Tim. Come on. So, yeah. So she's an actress in the movie, and she takes this gig that leads her out to a secluded mansion in the middle of winter, and she may or may not be held captive for reasons which we can't get into until spoilers, but there's a lot to it. There's a whole backstory to it, but so
luckily they send in stars to rescue her.
The stars police team from Raccoon City. Yes. Very good. Very good.
Hey, you say abandoned mansion in the middle of the woods. It's the first thing I'm going to.
Yeah.
By the way, at some point we should do an episode where we review basically just the live action movie scenes from the first Resident Evil game.
I think I would enjoy that more than doing the actual live action Resident Evil movies.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll never do those movies. Screw them. I think did we do the first one? I forget.
No. We did.
Oh, thank God.
We did Welcome to Raccoon City, the newest one. We did do a commentary track for the first Resident Evil movie.
That's right.
Once upon a time.
Familiar.
Which is not something we do anymore because we basically stopped coming up with movies to do commentary tracks for. Maybe once in a blue moon. Maybe it'll be a special occasion occasionally. But
throw money at us and we'll pretty much do anything. So,
but that was back when the commentaries were a thing for a little bit. That was one of the movies we did. So, anywho, yeah.
I'm surprised people like listening to us. I can't imagine listening to us and watching a movie.
Depending on the movie, it may make the movie more bearable, Tim.
That's fair.
I think the problem is, though, is that are we willing to do the really, really bad movies that we've already seen to give people...
Oh, that's tough. That's a tough call.
Although, now that I'm saying this, it's dawning on me that people would probably hit an extremely high goal to get us to do a commentary for The Boy, I just
I thought you were gonna say Leprechaun, but the boy.
Oh
yeah,
yeah, or
be...
Leprechaun. I feel like I feel like they'd buy it at a high price, Tim. Either way.
I will. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because obviously I would do that for free, but then you would probably be way up there. So
yeah, you still have to devote some time to it though, Tim. It's not. Yeah, don't.
They're very long movies.
Well, they're not. I mean,
I watch them at half speed.
Are they complicated for you, Tim?
I just like them to last as long as possible.
Does it almost make Warwick Davis's accent sound Irish?
He doesn't have an Irish accent. He has a leprechaun accent. Come on. It's very different things.
What is a leprechaun accent? There's no such thing as a leprechaun accent.
Yeah, it's Warwick Davis.
That's bullshit. You can't just make up new accents to explain why he's bad at an accent. That's not the rules. We're here to talk about Dead of Winter, Tim. Serious business.
That's right. Yeah. Very serious movie.
Right. Tim, what did you think of Dead of Winter? Just that's a damn question. I can't take you seriously with that mustache. It's so distracting. I need to look over here.
Sorry, I was thinking of a very dumb joke. Okay. Yeah, what did I think of Dead of Winter? I feel like maybe we should apologize to our listeners, because I don't know, they're probably gonna try to watch this movie, and it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, they're probably saying it up to sound like it's horrible, but I just thought it was incredibly boring. Like, the overall plot itself is not bad, and I actually think, like, you know, the people in it, you know, mostly give pretty good you know, performances. You know, my girl, you know, Mary, you know, she's doing a pretty good job there, and you know, I guess there's some twists and turns, if you want to call it that, and you have the dad from Boy Meets World shows up, which you know, is always a fun guy to see. You know, whenever you see anyone from BMW, that's always a treat.
You can't call it BMW. People associate that acronym with something else,
Tim. But yeah, I don't know. Jeez, this is gonna be one of those tough ones. I honestly, I don't know if I have like a ton to say about it, because I just thought it was kind of dull and didn't really leave much an impression on me. It is pretty wintry, I guess. Like, you know, there's definitely scenes of a lot of snow and stuff. So, you know, that was, you know, that made me feel good, made me want to reach for a hot cup of cocoa.
I'm glad you said cup of cocoa.
Oh yeah, no, we don't. Ever since Grand Theft Auto, we can't even think about hot coffee. The implications are too much.
Yeah, that's the joke I was making. Yeah, sure.
What, I was gonna say hot cup of semen or something, you sick freak.
No, I was just implying
Garfield's owner.
I was just implying cock, Tim. Just cock. Not a cup of anything.
A cup of cock, Jesus Christ.
No, you said it made you want to reach for.
Okay.
Never mind. Okay, never mind. Look, let's reel it in a little bit here. Let's reel it in.
It's end of the year. We're a little silly. We you know, we got our Christmas break coming up soon.
So this. All right, you give your general feelings. My general feelings.
It sucked.
Whoa. Okay.
It was fine. It was okay.
Yeah, my feelings is that it was perfectly fine, perfectly okay. I don't think it's a bad movie, but I don't think it was a particularly engaging movie either. It's actually got a pretty crazy plot when you actually stop and break down what's actually happening in it. But it is definitely directed in a very, I don't know, very, like, it veers more towards thriller, I suppose, than it does horror. Do you know what it reminded me a lot of?
Sure.
It made me think a lot of Misery, right?
Yeah, totally.
Someone's trapped with someone who they think is friendly at first, but as the movie goes on, they realize they're in danger. You know, it's very Misery, kinda, and it's you know, it predates the movie of Misery. I don't know if the book was already out. Probably was, but
it's probably around this time.
Yeah, because this is 1987. We've not said that yet. Worth mentioning. So yeah. No, I think, Steam.
Like,
yeah, on you go.
well, yeah. Like, you know what it kind of feels like to me is it's like it has a pretty decent plot and like some decent actors and stuff, but I don't know if this was actually in theaters, but it feels like a made for TV movie for me. Like it, like in the look and stuff. And I don't know, I feel like if you take the same plot and the same actors and everything, but maybe tighten it up just a smidge and actually get maybe a little bit more of a director with a bit more interesting visual style or something, just to kind of plus it up a bit, then I think you could really have something. But yeah, as is, it just feels like maybe like typical, like almost like a Lifetime movie or something, which doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Like those things can be enjoyable, but didn't rock my world or anything.
Yeah, the direction's just kind of dull, and I think it's a shame, because there's moments that are kind of interesting, and there's some crazy plot elements that it does get into. In terms of other cast members that are worth mentioning, Roddy McDowall's in it, who most people might not know his face as much, but he was actually the main actor who played a lot of the main apes in the classic Planet of the Apes movies. He's in here, so that's someone to look out for. I think it definitely holds back at certain points when it could be doing more interesting things, and I definitely found myself thinking, oh, if this was like, I don't know, who's like a thriller or horror director of this time period that would have been really good.
John Carpenter.
Yeah, I guess John Carpenter. Maybe Brian De Palma. I could see this.
Like Catherine Bigelow. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think she was known for these types of movies, admittedly. I mean, she did do Near Dark, to be fair, but
Toby Hooper.
Toby. You're naming directors you're thinking of now.
It's a little early, but I could see Rob Zombie taking a crack at this.
Wait, it's just Rob Zombie in 1987. Wait, 8? That's probably a little bit older, because his music was a thing in the mid-90s, I think.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so he's probably at least like, I don't know, in his late teens, maybe early 20s. Robert
Zombie.
Gazoon type.
Yeah. I mean, I think there'll be enough interesting stuff to talk about in the movie when we're going through the plot, but it's definitely not something that's left me with like a strong feeling where I'm like, oh, this is this crazy movie you have to see, or this is this really engrossing movie you have to see. It feels like it probably would have been.
I mean,
Go.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, there's probably like a reason that you don't see this brought up as like a hidden little cult classic that no one's ever heard of, like that you gotta check it out. Like, there's like, I mean, I don't know, I don't maybe it is secretly beloved, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about it. And honestly, I could probably bet pretty decent money that I'll probably never hear anyone mention this movie again.
I actually had heard of it because there was because there was a Blu-ray line that was being put out, and admittedly I don't think this fits in this line, but it was the Slasher Classics collection, and this was like number 10 in that in that collection. And there was other stuff there that made sense. There was like Sleepaway Camp 2, for example, was in that set, and that made sense. I think they were just like, oh, we can get the rights to this. I guess we can kind of pretend it's a slasher movie. It's not. Yeah. It's really not a slasher movie. No. But I could see where, okay, someone's holding a knife. I guess that counts.
Sure. Yeah.
That'll do. So, yeah. It's not. This is the sort of movie where we see these types of movies every year. Movies that are just okay. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just fine. And they don't tend to stand the test of time. So it is kind of interesting to go back and discover one of these from an earlier time period, because, I wasn't alive yet. You were like, I don't know, one. So we these movies don't.
Although I do recall my mother sitting me in front of the TV and saying, "Now watch Dead of Winter."
Does that count as child cruelty?
I mean, if that's child cruelty, then should see some of the things I let my kids watch.
Just walk in, Serbian films playing on the TV, keeping Wyatt distracted. No, I think seeing these types of middling films from earlier eras, because you don't tend to see them as much because no one's talking about them. You talk about the great movies or the good movies, and you talk about the terrible movies that have sort of got a bit of a, like, oh, they've got a reputation for being so bad. But this type of stuff is very middling. You know, it's an MGM movie. It's a studio-made movie. It looks and feels like one, which is a good thing to a point because it feels like it has production value, but it also does feel kind of in the bland, like, territory of that. So, yeah, it's, you know,
kind of makes you like wonder like what, you know, movies that like came out this year or the last couple of years that maybe ones that we even reviewed that like will end up being like that. Like, you know, it's weird stuff that you know, who'll be thinking about this in 4 to 5 years.
Well, I think that's the point though, is that it's not weird. It's just the non-weird stuff. It's the stuff that's going to be forgotten at the time. And just to test your theory, Tim, I'm bringing up the podcast feed so I can pick some. Hold on. So it's loading. Oh, yeah, come on, Pinkcast. Oh, thank you. All right, so from the last year, I will say that you were in paternity leave for a lot of the years, so it's kind of a weird. But I'll look at the previous year. I'm looking at 2022.
Yeah, that's probably better.
Yeah. Let me see here. I would take a guess and say that. To be fair, we kind of dodged a lot of the adult ones. See if I go a bit further back.
Maybe we only do bangers. I mean, that's possible.
I don't think that's true. I think we do some stinkers. But no, I'm thinking like, what was that one? Is it A Turning? Was that a movie we did? With a kid.
Was that the one that was like an adaptation of the Turning of the Screw, or?
Oh, maybe that's not the one I'm thinking of then.
Was that the one with Finn Wolfhard? I think, isn't it?
That's that's the one that's the title I've said, but that's not the movie I'm thinking of. It's
okay.
It's the one with the kid's possessed, and there's like a scene where they go to therapy, and the kid scares the shit out of the therapist. It's a really dull movie, and I don't remember anything else. I can picture the poster in my head, but not the title, annoyingly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's not even popping up in my head, so yeah, that's maybe a good one then.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure we've done a ton of these over the last few years. Like, you know, is anyone going to remember? I keep seeing sequels. Like Yummy. Do you remember Yummy, Tim?
No, not at all.
You don't remember Yummy? That was the zombie movie at the like plastic surgery building. It was a foreign movie.
Oh, right. Okay, actually, yeah, not horrible, but yeah, I mean, maybe needs a better title or something.
You don't remember it though. What about The Wretched?
Was that the one where like they're in a where like the guys in like kind of like a summer lake kind of area? Or no, or was that the one with like the mom that was like suffering from dementia or something?
No, I think you're thinking of Relic. I want to say no. Relic.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gee, yeah. I don't know. Wretched.
Points have been made. 1 BR or 1 bedroom, depending on how you say it.
Okay, I mean that at least that one I remember what movie that is. Like, it's not a movie that I ever think of at all. But
I found it. The Turning. Okay. That's the one I was trying to remember.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't tell you anything else about it, but it's called The Turning.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, we do these movies, right? We see these movies from time to time. Or even hell, this year's Boogeyman. Like, is anyone going to be talking about that Boogeyman movie in 5 years? I mean, I don't think so.
I mean, like, not many people probably. It's like everything, you know, has its fans, so there probably will be people that will go to bat for the movie, but yeah, I don't think it'll remain in like the larger pop culture consciousness, you know?
Or at the very least, if it does, it'll be because it's people who like it are probably people who are all like 13 now. It was probably like an early teens, like, oh, this is like our first spooky movie, so we kind of liked it. But to anyone who's seen like a handful of them, it was pretty, you know, derivative and repetitive and the same old shit.
Yeah, and like stuff like that will probably always have at least some kind of life because of the people involved, and it's based on a Stephen King story. So like, there'll always be lists that'll be like, oh, 10 underseen Stephen King movies or something like that it could be on. So but yeah, I mean, if you took that stuff away, if it was just a movie on its own, I wouldn't think that it's very memorable. But
Yeah, maybe it kind of lasts in memory just a little bit because someone from Yellow Jackets is in it. Maybe that'll
right.
give it a little bit of cachet.
And then and I guess the other kind of larger question is the age of streaming. Does it make things like last longer than they normally would have? Because it's like, yeah, like you take something like, Dead of Winter. If this was a movie that just existed on, like VHS or DVD, and you had to actually go out and either rent it or buy it or something, like, would it be, I mean, not like this is a movie that's getting talked about that much, but like, would it be something that we even would have checked out or have done,
It's funny because I feel like streaming in a way does make it possible for movies to be remembered, but I would argue that the sea of movies that they get thrown into is so polluted and so vast that it's much harder to actually be noticed in the first place and be remembered. Because I feel like The Boogeyman, if that didn't have the other things that made people check it out at the time, and you throw that into the sea of Tubi movies that have The Boogeyman Returns and Boogeyman Apocalypse and whatever other crap movies are on there, it would probably just fade into the overall obscurity of everything,
Yeah, like there has to be a balance between accessibility and disposability. Like, yes, it's good that everything is accessible, but when everything is accessible, like, does that make everything feel less like, oh, I'm, like it feels just more like disposable, like stuff you can just throw on and not pay attention to or forget about, versus a time when you would make an appointment to sit down and watch a movie and kind of take it in,
It's why I still like buying or blind buying even stuff on iTunes, is because if I've paid for it and I bought it and I own it, I make more of an effort to give it attention and,
me too, yeah,
really give it a proper chance. And even if I do end up hating it, at least I don't have to worry that I wasn't properly trying it. I like, at least I know for sure that I just didn't like it. I was looking up the director of this movie, Dead of Winter, as we were talking there. Now, he actually is an acclaimed director. He made Bonnie and Clyde, which is a very well done film.
Oh, wow.
Very, renowned and all that. But clearly, I don't know if it's just because this is later in his career. Obviously, he's an old man by this point. Or, and some directors do kind of, I don't know, they get more safe, I guess, as they're getting older. We've seen it time and time again. Or if it's just a case of this is just not the type of movie that he's, his strengths aren't in this sort of thriller, almost horror type movie. He's more of a character director, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's why. But he's done some big stuff in the past, so I wanted to point that out just in case people heard us say the direction and this isn't very good, and people might feel like we're sort of just writing him off. But yeah, so the last thing he did was an episode of a TV show in 2001. Unsurprisingly, he's been passed away for a while. He died in 2010. So, anyway. All right, we ready for spoilers? Talk about Dead of Winter?
Sure.
All right, spoilers for Dead of Winter. You've been warned, everyone. So, let's try and... I feel like I should do an overview of what the entire plot is first, just to try and explain, because I feel like it'll be really confusing or annoying trying to go through the scenes and try and withhold parts of the information that's supposed to be secret.
Sure.
So, the first scene of the movie is an extended opening where a mysterious woman and we see her sort of going to a train station and getting something out of a safety deposit box. It's a bag of money, and she's in a car and she's being followed by someone. And I was convinced this was Mary Steenburgen, and it turned out it was. But I didn't. I thought I'd been corrected on that for a while, because this woman dies at the end of this big sequence. A killer sneaks in the back of her car and strangles her to death, and then cuts off one of her fingers after she's died. And that sequence is mostly all right. There's some stalking scenes. There's her in the phone booth late at night. It's kind of moody. There's snow everywhere. This, if anything, this is maybe the most horror movie sort of segment of the whole film is this opening sequence. But this,
yeah, I would say like at least this kind of opening scene, it had a little bit of atmosphere. I feel like more than most of the movie.
Yeah, it sets you up for a movie where someone's going to be stalking and killing people. And that's not what the movie actually is. This is just like a prologue to what the story is. But it cuts to her main character. It cuts to Julie, played by Mary Steenburgen, and she's an actress living in New York, and she's got an audition that day. And I saw her here, and she's got very different hair, and I thought, oh, maybe that wasn't her in the opening scene. Because it does make a point of hiding and obscuring her face in that opening. You just see her from behind, you see her maybe like a slightly on side view. It makes it not 100% clear that it's her. So basically, the plot of this movie is that she goes to an audition, and the guy played by Roddy McDowall, right? He's Mr. Murray. He immediately looks enchanted by her and says she's perfect, and he then pitches her that he knows someone working on a movie where the lead actress pulled out, and she needs to be replaced, even though they're already halfway through shooting the movie, and she looks identical to this woman. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe that was her in the opening scene, like in terms of the actress, right? This was her playing the other character, and now she's been roped into this movie. So she takes this job. She's driven to this remote house upstate New York. It's the middle of a winter storm. It's snow. The car doesn't start the next day. The phone appears to be dead. But what's actually happening here is this old therapist doctor who's in a wheelchair, and this is his house. And how many's helper here, Mr. Murray, played by Roddy McDowall, they have lured this woman into this trap because they want to convince another woman that the woman who was murdered in the opening scene is not actually murdered, because they're trying to blackmail her for money in relation to a murder that happened years ago that was witnessed by the original woman in the opening scene. Mary Steenburgen plays 3 different people in this movie. She plays the murdered woman at the start, she plays the main character of Julie, and then the sister who is being blackmailed by the therapist and Mr. Murray is the sister of the woman at the start, is also played by Mary Steenburgen. So she's playing all 3 of these roles in this movie. And yeah, so there's a lot going on there, Tim.
I'm just imagining the trailer that would be like, going through like the actors, and it'll be like Roddy McDowall and Mary Steenburgen and Mary Steenburgen and Mary Steenburgen. Like it's one of those like cheesy like Eddie Murphy movies or something.
Yeah, except for the fact that they've probably tried to hide it with this one because it's meant to be a surprise, meant to be a twist.
I mean, I'm joking, obviously.
I know, I'm saying, I feel like they were probably very much like, oh no, we're not going to tell them that, but this is going to be a huge shock when it turns out to be her again, and then her again, yes. as the movie rolls on. Because there's a scene, so they do a whole thing where they have her up to the house for the day, and then they make her memorize these lines, and the next day they're shooting like an audition tape with her in this new haircut, new wardrobe. And the idea is this director of the film is going to come and see this tape later on, and this is like an audition tape they're going to show him. But after this scene happens, and we don't get to hear everything she says, we get to hear a little bit of it. It sounds like she's doing like a dramatic monologue or something. But after this scene happens, and this is where the movie, you realize, oh shit, there's something convoluted going on here. Because after this happens, Roddy McDowall takes the car that's not supposed to be working. He takes the car and drives it to an unknown place, an unknown address, and there's a mysterious woman watching from a window. And Roddy McDowall puts the tape in the letterbox. This woman gets the tape, puts the tape into her VCR, and we see what the monologue was. And the twist here, or reveal here, is that the monologue she was told to learn is her talking about what happened to the woman in the opening scene. She talks about being attacked in a car, about being strangled, about waiting for someone at a phone booth, but then this killer getting her. And after that monologue finishes, and we never see this woman who's watching, we only see her from the back of the chair. Once that monologue's done, it switches to a recording of the old therapist man, and he's like, you see, she is still alive. The game continues. And I'm like, what the hell? is this movie about? I came into this for just, there's a woman trapped in a mansion and a serial killer's trying to get to her. And I've got some weird convoluted plot where there's like mastermind games going on. Where this old man who likes to play chess is blackmailing someone. And, you know, they clarify it a bit more as the movie goes on. But this scene was like, okay, what is this movie? Like, we're going into weird territory now.
Yeah, I mean, I will give the movie some credit. It's definitely not what I expected. Like, I was expecting something a little more straightforward, and it, you know, it definitely does have some twists and turns for sure. But I mean, it's kind of a shame because, like, as you're explaining it, it's like, oh, like, this does sound kind of cool, but again, I think it's just maybe a product of the filmmaking or something that, I don't know, as you're watching it, it's not like doing that as much for me. It's just,
I mean, I think the word for it
just a little more dull.
Yeah, I think the word for it, Tim, is dry. It just feels too dry. Like,
dry is a good word.
It's doing all these crazy things technically, but it's so dry as it's doing them that it's hard to like be like, whoa, this is crazy, or this is doing all this exciting stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
and I don't think anyone's doing like a bad job. Like, again, you know, these are all like, you know, like pretty good actors and stuff, so they're not like phoning it in or anything. It's just, yeah, maybe the visually it might have needed like a little work or something, or like even, you know, like the mansion where most of the movie takes place, I felt like was a really boring location. Like, it just felt very like empty and drab. You know, like if you compare it to something like, you know, The Shining or something, where it's like, you know, it's not like it was, you know, the Overlook Hotel. It's not like super crazy or funky colors, but it does feel so like interesting just looking at, like, you know, the carpet and the walls and stuff on there. And obviously, like, you know, Kubrick is a master and, you know, very detail oriented and stuff. So not, you know, maybe that's an unfair advantage, but just to compare it like something like that, what, you know, where the scenery and stuff was very dull.
Yeah, I felt it. I assumed because of the name it was going to make more use of the fact that they're surrounded by a winter snowstorm. And
sure, yeah.
And I feel like
it was like, what, one or two times that like she runs out in the snow or whatever, or that we get a scene in the snow.
She tries to escape once or twice, and she ends up like passing out of the cold because it's so freezing outside. And that's fine. Like, I get that the snowstorm is what's making it hard for her to just run away. Like, that's fine. Okay, so that's what's keeping her there. You know, aside from the two men that are kind of holding her secretly captive. I think some of the beats of the film, though, are just kind of dull. Like, I think particularly like her first several signs that something's not quite right, where she finds that there's photographs of like the murdered woman who looks like her, and the old man explains it as, oh, you know, yeah, she did have a psychotic break and she killed herself. It's like, okay, I guess that would explain it. But then she finds like her own driver's license in the fireplace, and then checks her wallet, and like everything's missing, like all of her identification's all gone. And naturally she's getting more scared at this point. But honestly, this portion of the film where she's slowly learning that she has to be scared and that these people are bad and mean her harm, that for me was actually the most boring part, bizarrely. Even that should be the most exciting part. That should be the part that's super tense, and instead it felt like it was going through its motions. So I don't really have much to say about that, really. It, you know, it, there was something I wanted to get to, but I can't remember what it was now. I don't know. Thoughts and feelings on all that stuff, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I think another part that was like a little tough to deal with was I never felt like the two people that were keeping her trapped there like seemed very threatening to me. Like, they obviously are, because, you know, they've done some mess up stuff, and then she does, like, you know, she does fight them and stuff at the end. So, but also at the same time, like, they're just kind of like two old guys. Like, you know, it seemed like, you know, it wouldn't be impossible to like overtake them or, you know, use stuff to your advantage. And maybe one of the most effective scenes to me, I thought, was when the cops came and, you know, and they were, you know, because she manages to get a call out to the police or whatever, and they come to check on her, and, you know, the therapist guy is just, you know, explains to him that she's one of his patients, and, you know, she's just off her meds and acting crazy and stuff. Like, I thought that was an effective scene where you did kind of feel the helplessness and trap, you know, the trepidiness of the situation where it's like, oh,
the trapsicity.
yeah, yeah. But I thought that was like effective with showing that like, oh, like she's so close to what she should be being saved, but the guy is convincing enough that the cops think that he's telling the truth and stuff, even though they do kind of explore a little, but they're like typical horror movie kind of thing where they don't actually find any of the stuff she's talking about, like the dead corpse and stuff. So
yeah, that's a little bit later in the film, but it kind of caps off like what's effectively a lot of gaslighting. They just keep gaslighting her and you're crazy. There's nothing to worry about. There's this, there's that, and it all kind of boils down to the kind of, after she tries to escape the first time, they drug her and she passes out in her room after barricading the door. And it turns out that the mirror is like a secret door. So Roddy McDowall comes in, and you don't quite know what he's going to do. They kind of teased it earlier by having him and the old guy were talking about sharpening a knife. So they kind of seed this earlier. But he comes in, and we don't know what he does until she wakes up in the morning, and there's like a little bit of blood like on the bed, and she's also been changed into her pajamas. So he undressed her and dressed her again. So just to make you feel a bit squeamish about the whole thing.
Yeah.
But she basically notices a bandage on her hand and her finger's missing. It's the same finger that was cut off of the victim at the start. And at this point we know that she's meant to be this, like she wasn't auditioning for a movie role. She was auditioning to be this woman who was killed because it benefits these two guys, particularly the old man, if someone else thinks she's alive. So she's missing a finger now. And when she ends up screaming top of her lungs and whatever else, and she gets out of the secret entrance, and she gets to the phone, and she talks to her husband first, because we didn't even mention she has a husband. That's the guy from BMW. Yes. But he is like, he's like, okay, can you tell me where you are? And she doesn't really know exactly where she is, but she knows she was on the she was on the motorway for X amount of time. She knows that the gas station gave them a free goldfish after they got fuel.
Such a weird detail.
Yeah, but of course it's going to be important later, because when the husband's looking for her, he's going to get given a goldfish and realize that he's in the right town. So he's like, yes,
right, yeah,
onwards and upwards. But he's like, hey, call the police and tell them what you've told me. And I did sort of stop and think about it. I went, you would probably call the police first. That would be like, if you realize you could call out for help, wouldn't 911 be the first thing you call out for before you call your husband? But for it's not a big thing. Maybe some people would call their spouse first. I don't know.
Like at the very least, like I would assume that, I don't know exactly how it works, but like if you're calling 911, it's probably going to some kind of like local, calling center or something that hopefully they're a little closer and maybe might know a little bit more. You're talking about when trying to pinpoint the location versus, you're talking to your husband. It's just like, what, goldfish? Like, what are you talking about?
Yes, he's very confused, and she's not been able to call him since she left, and he's been very worried. They were kind of fighting before she left because he seemed to be very upset she was taking the job. So, I think this whole thing does lead to that police scene, because they explain to her what she's there for once they catch her. And she, at this point, she's found the dead body, and honestly, it's not a good prop. Like, there's like a fake dead body of what was meant to be the woman at the start of the movie, so it's like a copy of her, and it does look kind of fake and kind of shit. But she sees this, obviously that freaks her out, and after she finds the body, they're giving her more drugs, and they're treating her wound, and that's when the police arrive, and we get the scene you were talking about where, like, they just gaslight her, and it makes her feel even more helpless and frustrated, because like he has documents for, because this other woman that looked like her was his patient. That's part of the backstory, is that's how he met her, is that this woman was one of his patients, and she told him about this murder she witnessed that was to do with her sister, and that's where all the blackmail stuff come from. So so this is the thing, as much as you say, wouldn't the police like take her away just in case, he whips out documentation saying that she's been submitted to him, that she is under his care. And it's like, okay, this is like getting to a point where it is relatively convincing. I think at this point I was like, oh, just say to them, please, like, arrest me, like slap one of the policemen and just get arrested and have them take you to the jail cell, Because at least then, once you've sobered up from whatever they've given you, you can explain it better, and
that's a good idea.
You'll be safe.
And I think she was also drugged at this point, so she's also kind of like starting to kind of fade, which it doesn't help her case when it's making her seem like a little loopier,
Yeah, and what's worse is that when they put her back up in her room, they'd moved the dead body that was in the attic to her room to hide it.
Oh yeah.
And that makes her scream. So the police hear her scream as they're leaving, but at this point they just think she's off her rocks. And so yeah, I mean I think conceptually it's a really effective moment where it's like, oh, okay, he convincingly tells the police that this woman is just crazy and that she's under his care, and because he is he's a licensed therapist, he had a practice, he has documentation showing that a woman who looks exactly like her, with her haircut and everything, is that. The one thing that's not great about this though is that once the husband and her brother, who's with the husband, went looking for her, and they find the town and they get the goldfish at the gas station and they realize this is where she is, they go to the police station and he's like, hey, here's some photos that I took of my wife before she left, because he's a photographer, so he was taking a bunch of photos. And he's like, hey, look, that's my wife, she's at this place with this psychiatrist. And the policemen who were at the house and saw her said, wait, this is your wife? No, that's not the woman we saw. And I'm like, okay, hold on. Movie. Either she looks identical to this previous woman that it'll trick her sister, and therefore this policeman would recognize that this is the same woman, or you're telling me she's not instantly recognizable as the same woman, and that this is like a Clark Kent thing where just changing her hair has made her completely unrecognizable to this policeman.
I mean, I don't know. You see that your wife has curly hair, and the woman up there, she kind of had a shorter, straight hair. It's two different women. I
this is my problem though, is that either way would have been fine, but the fact that the movie has some characters thinking, no, this is definitely, like, all these different women are the same person because they look that much alike. But in this scene, her different haircut is convinced this policeman, no, they're two different women. That's not her. That's not who we saw. So yeah, that felt really stupid, because the entire premise of this movie up until this point is that these women are identical. So the fact that he's mistaking the woman that is the same woman as not being the same woman is absolutely absurd. And it's not until the husband says, they cut off her finger, for Christ's sakes, where they both look at each other and go, wait a minute, she had a cut off finger. Oh no. So that's how he convinces the police to take them to the house. They're too late to actually help her. She has to, kill everyone herself first before they get there. But they do eventually show up. The end of the movie is them getting there and taking her away to safety. So
arresting her for murder.
Yes. She has killed, because basically the final part of the movie is that the sister, who's also played by Mary Steenburgen, comes to the house to pay the blackmail money or whatever it is, and they show her sister, who's lying doped up on the bed, but it's obviously really our main character, and she's basically, she's this sort of rich woman with a fur coat, and she's got the fur hat on, and she's very cold and evil, basically. And she clearly wants to kill these men instead. She doesn't want to actually give them what they want. She's just trying to stab the old man in the back when he's not looking. But
of course, yeah.
And this is the sad part, is that I actually think the premise of the ending is quite fun, which is that our main character actually encounters the villain woman here, the sister, and gets into a fight, and we don't see the end of the fight, but then the next time we see the evil sister, I think most of the audience will immediately go, oh no, she's pretending to be the sister. This is actually our main character, who is now using this appearance being the same as an advantage. Right. So she's now wearing the fur coat and she's wearing the fur hat, and she stashed the dead body of the black male sister into there's a sort of compartment in the couch. And I was like, damn, you know what? See, if this was a fun movie, this would be such a good climax, is her turning the tables on them by using the same trick that they were trying to use on the villain, or the other villain, I should say, because they're obviously the villains. But that's actually a fun idea, and she actually kills Roddy McDowall with this trickery. She's demanding to find her sister, and Roddy McDowall's taking her around the house and showing different places. And just as he notices, because she's got her hand in her pocket the whole time to hide the finger, just as he notices that, she stabs him, and it's like, this would be a fun death, except for some reason they decide to have no blood, despite the fact that there's 3 wounds that would be have blood coming out of them.
Yeah, in terms of like gore and stuff, it is a very bloodless movie, which again probably, you know, kind of adds a little bit to it, maybe, you know, being a bit dull. But I mean, obviously it's not a movie that you want like Evil Dead level.
Yeah, I'm not asking for a splatter movie here, but he gets, so he tries to block a stab, right? So he ends up getting his own hand stabbed up to his neck, right? So the blade's going through his hand, coming out the other side, and then get into his neck. And somehow, in the long shot of him falling backwards in that position, there's not a single dribble of blood coming from anywhere. Yeah. And that just felt really weird. And like, there's no, look, there's no way there wouldn't be some blood coming out of that. I think there's a little bit of blood on the pillow when his body's found by the old man a little bit later, but it's not much. It's like, I feel like there should be a lot of blood coming out of that wound, but, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey. It just makes it feel like, just not as really violent as it should be, or as impactful as it should be. Yeah,
again, I'm not asking, like, I would be fine if they didn't even show it. If they just cut away to her reaction or something, it would feel in line with the type of movie it is, but they did choose to linger on him falling down with this blade in his hand and neck. So it's really weird that there was no blood. So they shot themselves in the foot with how they chose to cover it, I guess. But it's not like they were going
it would be really funny if his... or I just think it would be funny if, like, just this one scene, it just turned into like an NC-17 level like gore fest where it's just like a hose of blood spraying all over Mary Steenburgen.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's not even like this is a PG-13 and they had to like try and be tame. I'm sure this is probably still R-rated. They just chose not to have any blood for whatever reason. So
yeah,
I don't know, weird. But it is what it is. And then I never really had a problem with her being held captive by these two characters because you did have Roddy McDowall up and able to do everything. I think where it felt a bit weird to me is when she starts like having like a fight in a chase with the old man who's been in a wheelchair the whole movie, and he starts like basically walking with like a fire poker as if it's a cane, and he's only slowly kind of lumbering around, but she's still the one that's being chased by him the entire time, and it kind of felt like, I mean, I feel like if you wanted to take this old bastard, you probably could. He's very immobile. Like he's not the most threatening, and he does kind of have a fun over the top death where after she stabs him in the back in the attic, she tricks him by having the dead body of the original victim in like a cupboard, and because she's been made to look like her, it looks just like her, except the fact that it's really fake looking. But that's, you know, in the movie it's meant to look real. She stabs him in the back, and then it's been set up that he's like he used to be a hunter, but the cop earlier on pointed out that, well, he wasn't much of a hunter if he had to use these big bear traps to do it. So he does step in a bear trap, one of his own bear traps at the end of the movie, and it was mildly funny. Like, I was like, this could be way funnier if they tried to make it funnier, but they didn't, so it just kind of feels a little bit drab, which is a shame. Lacking punch. Everything lacks punch in this movie. Not enough punch.
Very true. Yeah.
Or juice. Not enough juice. Whatever word you want to use. Pizzazz.
Little, pizzazz.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's a shame because a lot of stuff when you break it down, it's like, you know, this does sound like kind of a cool little movie, but it just, you know, like anything, it just kind of comes down to the execution. And you know, like we said, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like, you know, it's perfectly fine, middle of the road kind of thing if you want to check it out, but it's just nothing about it is doing that, going that extra mile to, you know, make it more memorable or noteworthy or anything.
Yeah, it could have done more with its setting, it could have done more with the winter theme, and even this sort of fun play on like, oh, they're trying to make her look someone else, and then she turns the tables on them by looking like someone else to them to trick them. That sounds really good. Like, when you say it out loud like that, it actually sounds like a really fun premise for a movie. And maybe the fact that it's taken itself so absurdly serious is part of the problem. Or maybe it's fine that it takes itself seriously if it was just like a more engaging piece of direction. But either way, it's missing something. It's just missing the spark to actually give it the life that it needs. And I do think it is down to style and direction, because I think the cast are perfectly solid. The premise is convoluted, but could be fun. I don't think it's a problem. I think it is just down to the direction and how the material's handled. So,
yeah.
We've said middle of the road and like kind of just dull like a lot in this. So I feel like I can predict roughly what number we're going to land on here. But if you'd like to rate Dead of Winter, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, not to get too repetitive, but pretty much everything we said so far is there's stuff that could be potentially really cool about it, but yeah, just kind of shoots itself in the foot, or I guess bear traps itself in the foot by just and again, like it's like you said, the director is obviously has some chops. He has done some pretty famous, memorable stuff in the past. So I don't want to put it squarely on him. I mean, maybe it's a budget thing. Maybe it was a timing thing that maybe they had to kind of rush it out, or who knows, for whatever reason that it ends up the way it ends up. But it's almost kind of more frustrating than sometimes you watch like a really bad movie that just never had any chance of being good, and it kind of stinks because you can see the possible potential in this when you hear some of those story beats, and seeing like the people that they had to work with, like it could have potentially been pretty cool. Another thing I didn't really touch on, again, probably just because it was pretty unmemorable, but the music wasn't really doing much for me anyway.
I don't even remember any music, to be honest.
Which is probably the issue. It doesn't make much of an impact. But again, you think about someone like Carpenter or something, like you add like a pretty like little synth score or something to this, just something like that to just to juice it up a little bit. It could have been a lot better. But like you said, very middle of the road. So I'm gonna have to give it a very middle of the road score. I think I'll bump it up just a touch and give it a 5.5, which, so I guess it's maybe just slightly better than something that's completely down the road, middle of the pack or whatever, but yeah, not by very much. And I guess that little extra nudge just kind of goes to maybe some of the crazier plot points that sounded kind of cool, or some of the performances, or even if it's not the best movie, I always enjoy spending time with Mary Steenburgen. She's a a fun a fun actress. So I'll go with 5.5.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we didn't really talk about as well is that they mentioned that Mr. Murray, the Roddy McDowall character, was also a former patient of the psychiatrist, and they don't really do a whole lot with him. He's just kind of a servant to him, and there's the one moment before he dies where he sort of yells out and acts a little bit crazy, like he's almost doing like a bit of a Norman Bates kind of thing. And I did really feel like, we could have done so much more with this. The idea that this guy is a potential serial killer that this therapist is using as his henchman, like he's manipulating him to be his henchman, to kill for him, to do crazy things for him. Like, there's a lot you could probably do with that, and the movie doesn't really do anything with it. So add that to the list of interesting concepts that the movie just kind of lets go. So
evil therapist slasher could be really cool.
It's interesting. Yeah, instead of killing anyone himself, he just convinces all of his crazy patients to go kill people. There's an idea there.
Don't mind that.
But yeah, I'm just going to go to straight 5. I think it is. This is the definition of a 5 out of 10 to me. It's not bad. It's not good. It's got ideas, but it's just very dry. But there's enough there to not give it a negative score though as well. So 5 out of 10, pretty straightforward, I should say. So
yeah,
there you go. That's Dead of Winter. Sorry we didn't have a more interesting movie planned for you. I could tell you that coming up over the next, several months actually, we'll be largely doing 2023 movies before we finally get to our top 10 horror movies of 2023, which will come probably early April, which I know does seem a little bit late, but it gives us time to get through all the major things that we should see before we decide to make that list. So that's the real award season. Is when we decide it's award season. So
that's true.
Yeah,
the Screamies.
The Screamies, yes. So there's by the time this goes out, there will be a vote up for Patreon. The vote for January is a bunch of 2023 movies, so that they'll decide what one of those that we'll be doing. The votes for the following months probably won't be that. Those will probably be the only episodes in February and March that aren't 2023 movies are the ones that were voted for, but everything else will be. So hopefully you're looking forward to an Exorcist Believer review, you're looking forward to a Saw 11, you're looking forward to a Five Nights at Freddy's, you're looking forward to whatever else came out that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there's a bunch. So
Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
No, we're not doing that one, Tim. I told you. I told you. Maybe it's a bonus episode. That's the only way that one's getting done.
There might be a boner.
Between boner for the bonus episodes and then BOCO for anything else that's extra for Patreons, you're really coming up with all these stupid terms.
Oh, you're just like anti-bow. You say anything that starts with bow.
That's the show, everyone. We did mention earlier, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Help the podcast keep coming. And of course, you get a bonus episode every month at any tier. And we are thinking of something else that will kind of replace even more streams now that we're doing we're doing more episodes instead of even more streams. But there is something to kind of replace that is being discussed. So look forward to that coming beginning early January. Why are you smirking so much? Why what's so funny about this to you?
I just had an idea for something we could do.
Oh God, no. All right,
Hint: a sci-fi show.
We've already got a sci-fi show.
Not one that we do though.
You don't have time for another show, Tim.
Well, you could explain the movie to me. I could just go like, oh yeah.
I've got a replacement host on Ace, Tim.
Mm-hmm.
The experiment continues.
I can't believe I wasn't even offered the gig.
Thank you for watching, everyone. This has been Screams After Midnight. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies. Goodbye. Oh, and Happy New Year.